if I saw another day, only to scream into the night. Nothing ever tries to change, even if I want to realize. 'Cause I've been sitting here, same old ways, taking off without the same mistake. Darling, when you go away, it won't be as simple for you.
Yo, guys, right. First and foremost, I promise I'm going to be getting a new intro, a shorter starting streaming, a streaming intro rather than a 2-minute one. That is something that I'm going to be working on because I appreciate waiting for 2 minutes for me to go live is not cool. So yeah, I will get that sorted out. But anyway, guys, this is the Red Devil weekly Q&A. Like I said, it's a bit late today, but we did want to do a sales update show beforehand. The guys for tuning in, obviously, get your questions in for those who'll be tuning in. It's kind of going to be a combination show. We're going to be talking about the whole United transfer chaos, basically, which is what's going on, Amrabat, Maguire, etc. Then have a brief discussion regarding the Spurs game, and obviously, in the midst of that, we'll be trying to address some of your questions. So again, this is laid back. This is chill. It is the Q&A show, and it's not just Manchester United related. It could be anything football related or even life related. Just get them all. This is still the Q&A show. We're just sort of going to give a bit of a spin to it. Shout out to Samasi in the chat. Thank you for tuning in, Samasi. Really appreciate it. Get your questions in. First question. Like I said, so first question in. Thoughts on Kane's debut? Good. Yeah, I watched the Bayern versus Werder Bremen game. I thought that Kane was basically doing what I expect him to do, which is drop deep, assist, link up play, and score goals. And you got one assist and you got one goal. Fair enough. I literally, to be honest, the only thing that concerns me watching Bayern play is it's almost similar to Manchester United, where the wingers like to sort of come in, cut inside, do their own thing, a bit selfish. I didn't see many, aside from maybe from corners and set piece, I didn't see many really kind of like wanting to, really assist for Kane, if that makes any sense. So maybe that might change. I don't know. But that's just the only thing that I'd be a bit maybe concerned about if I was a Kane Spurs fan. What do you think, Tom? What did you think of Harry Kane's debut?
Yeah, I thought it was good. I thought, performance-wise, it was good. And again, as you said, the Bundesliga is renowned, high lines. So if he can hold the ball up, as we know, he's a brilliant player. Can turn on the ball or play the ball around the corner, and somebody can run onto it like Sané did. I mean, it's really a heaven for him, if we're being honest, to play against teams like that. He doesn't rely on his pace. He's not the quickest player in the world to get away from people. So it's more about being instinctive with your finishing, and really similar to what Lewandowski was. You could be said, not necessarily the most rapid player in the world, but the attributes were there to play. He's a very physical goal scorer, and he can hold the man off and get a shot away in the box, outside the box, or he can lay it off for a teammate. So, as it goes for it, I said anyway, I thought it was their perfect replacement really for Lewandowski. Maybe not in terms of the long term, but Bayern want to win here and now. So in terms of doing that, you've bought, in my opinion anyway, I think one of the top 3 goal scorers in the world. If not, I would arguably put Harry Kane maybe as the top goal scorer in the world behind Haaland. So if the metrics weren't there, Harry Kane last season didn't get talked about enough. because of the impact Haaland had on the league, but he actually had a brilliant season with goals and assists for last season in a very underperforming and underwhelming Spurs team. So he's in a better team, I think, with better players and a mildly better environment than what was at Tottenham at this stage right now. And yeah, I think really for him, I think he had to go, ultimately, really. He has to win trophies, even if people want to, lambast it and say, well, it's not the Premier League or whatever. If he wins a Champions League at Bayern Munich, nobody's going to care about Bundesliga or anything. They're just going to say he's won the Champions League. And I mean, even if he comes back at 34, I think he'll have, because he doesn't rely on his pace, he's an athlete. I think I think he could have 2 years in the Premier League and he could still break the record. So it can be done. And Alan Shearer, I'd probably say watch out because it can be done. As much as Haaland's a monster, if Haaland stays in the league, mate, I'd be getting worried. So don't worry about Harry Kane. If Haaland stays there for 10 years, I mean, he'll break your records.
Yeah, exactly. Although I suspect that if Real Madrid come calling for certain Haaland, he might be tempted to go. I would be so, especially because his agent is it was a 1 million real, unfortunately, rest in peace. So, but given it'll be presumably be an agent of that ilk, as it were, to get him with the he wants. But yeah, fair enough. Again, keep your questions coming in before we go the United transfer debacle. Samantha says we need a DM and we still need to adapt to Kane. That's true. Shout out to being shout. Yo, what's up? RSV also says I would love Bruno to play a more deeper as a deep line player next to Casemiro. I mean, he has to do that. Like you can't play. And we'll talk about in the Spurs preview on the channel, but he can't play like an. If you're going to play Bruno and Mount can't play like a deep line player, because Bruno at least can somewhat, and he did it for Sporting. Play like that times last season, and he did it for Sporting. So I don't know why this obsession of playing Bruno in the 8 if you're going to play Mount. For me, play him alongside Casemiro and see what happens. I mean, do you know what's even funny though, G? In games where we always criticise when Bruno plays out wide, arguably Mount's probably more suited to that because he has played out wide a lot more regularly. He's more of an effective. I think personally, I don't advise it because I think Mount should play in the middle rather than out wide. But if you're going to choose between the two of them, who's going to play in the 10 and who's going to play out wide for any game that you do, I'd rather stick Mount on the wing than have Fernandes on the wing because he's more influential in the middle of the field. But as we say, the problem is you don't then have that other midfielder to cover their ass. That's the problem. It's not necessarily about having somebody who's a quality number 8 or anything like that. No, we knew Mason Mount wasn't going to be that. Fernandes can play that role. Whether he's going to or not is the problem is he's that good of a creative player. He's been stuck into the category of it's him and Kevin De Bruyne. Who's the better creative midfielder? That's what everybody lambasts it on. They don't lambast it on, right, if we put him in the 8 role, how would he fare? How would he do? It's always, he has to play 10. He's the most creative player at United. He's the player that creates all the chances. He has to play creative midfield. But, as RVS is saying here, if you play him as a deep line playmaker next to Casemiro, do you know something? I think you're onto something. I don't think it's perfect, but it's better than what we saw against Wolves. Based upon, I think he's got the legs to cover Casemiro's arse, whereas Casemiro can cover Bruno based upon his actual analysis and reading of the game. Fernandes isn't a great reader of the game, but he's a great creative output, which is a partnership. They really complement each other well. A lot better than what Mount and Casemiro would do. And a lot better than what Eriksen and Casemiro would do, for me. That's why last season I was crying out, why do we not play Eriksen at 10? And I understood that Eriksen number 10 doesn't work because he doesn't have the legs to actually turn a man or break away from people anymore. He's not the same player that he was
4 or 5 years ago at Spurs. So I understand that argument now. But now you have a player who can do that in Mason Mount. So give him the responsibility. Let him play the role. If you're not going to do something different, and that's the only thing I worry is Ten Hag's a very stubborn and shrewd manager. He doesn't change a lot. And I knew this before we got him when he was at Ajax. I thought he's very shrewd in his ways. He plays the same 11, win, lose, draw, away, home. I don't care if you're on a plane 10 hours, jet lagged or whatever. He will always play the same team. He's stubborn. That's the problem. I don't mind him playing the same team that we saw against Wolves, but I want to see a different style based upon you move a couple of players into different positions. If we don't move some players about, you're going to have the same problem. And you're playing against a lot better team in Spurs than you are Wolves, who, for me, I think Spurs can finish the dinner a lot better than Wolves can. Even without Harry Kane, they've still got goals in them.
Yeah, of course,
Last season, it was absolutely terrifying. We went away to the top 9 teams in the Premier League, and we only won 1 game. It was shocking. We went away to we were up 2-0 at Spurs, cruising, and we absolutely bottled it. So
Oh, hello.
Hello, yeah.
Tommy there?
Are you still there, G?
Yeah. So go on. I mean, it was my connection. Go on.
Yeah, no. Like I say, in terms of what Avius is saying, in terms of the Cruz role, playing him next to Casemiro, I understand that based upon the legs, but Bruno's got more legs in him than Cruz has, based upon that, and he can get about the field a bit. So I think partnering Fernandes with Casemiro is probably the best deep pivot that we can have right now, unless, as we say, you sign another central defensive midfielder, the liking of an Amrabat, that profile of a player. If you don't do it, you're opening yourself up for a whole season of that midfield, mate. It's going to be ripped apart, ripped to absolute shreds. And I tell you now, if you thought going to away at Anfield last season was terrifying, if you thought going away to the Etihad was terrifying, mate, don't even hesitate or worry about it, because you're going in there basically with an open line down the midfield. There's no spine to the team at all. There's no spine at all. And as we speak right now, you have an injured number 9 in Anthony Martial. You have the new number 9 you've bought, which is injured. So you're having to overcompensate now. And I think it's very clear Rashford's going to be number 9 until one of the two is fit.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it compensates for what he can give as an output on the left wing.
Yeah.
But for me, I just think that Fernandes needs to be moved deeper and give Mount that responsibility. But Ten Hag will look at it as it's only 1 game. That's how he will look at it. He's stubborn. And unfortunately, that's how he is. Unless we see 5 or 6 games of the same shite week in, week out, I don't think a lot's going to change. That's the problem that I'm getting at. So unless there's going to be some sort of a change and he's going to see something where switch him out for like 30 minutes in a game and see the difference or something like that. Can we get more control of the game? That would be a better thing to do. But unless we sign this other midfielder, then there's going to be an absolute curse, I think, for the whole season, that teams are going to think, oh, we can absolutely take the mess out of these people. Because they can. Wolves did it. And Wolves, a lot of people are saying that they're going to go down. Yeah. Wolves absolutely shred our midfield apart.
Yeah.
And they've lost 2 of their best ones, Moutinho and Neves. And they still did that to us.
It's still the first game of the season. So, but yeah, I think it's possible. You should get a little bit worried, to be honest.
Oh, yeah.
SNB, Kane was almost the winger at the time today. Bayern still got work to do. Yep, they do. RSV, I also would love Eriksen playing further the pitch on the right hand next to Casemiro, who will be the ball carrier. Samasi says, where's Pavard? That's a question. Where's Pavard going? Well, according to reports, it looks like Inter seems to be having a communication with him. So United seem to not be in. Well, we'll talk. Once I get through these comments, we'll talk about United's debacle. Eriksen essentially replicating Modric, Bruno replicating Kroos with Casemiro as a destroyer, and also when we are in possession of the ball, Eriksen and Bruno should drop deep to form a double pivot, which they don't tend to do. Whether that's by coach instruction, I'm not sure. Big up AD, hope you're doing well. Go and subscribe to his channel. So that we will become very unpredictable. That's how Madrid play with hitting teams in transition. And then lastly, what I asked be Bruno's so excellent at spraying long short diagonal passes and being one switch to play when he's deep like Kroos. Giraffe says thoughts on Paqueta transfer fair. Well, that's interesting. That's very, very interesting. Yeah, it seems. Well, it's not really a transfer fair. It seems that he's been investigated for some betting related issues. And of course, if he's found guilty, then he's going to face quite a lengthy suspension. If anything, I feel bad for West Ham, because West Ham probably thinking we want to hold up for more. If they'd sold the dude already and agreed to like the 90 million that City wanted, he would have gone to City, contracts would have signed, agreed, and then this stuff would have come out, and then City would have been like, oh crap, So now West Ham can't make the bank, and they're potentially going to lose a player, and they need to sign. So they've lost Declan Rice. They're now going to lose another midfielder, so they actually need to sign 2 midfielders, and they've lost out on money for one. So I feel bad for West Ham. City have tons of midfielders, so I'm sure they'll be able to find someone else. So guys, what do you all think of Endo? I don't know if that's a trick question because I've not really seen him play. Was it Stuttgart he came from?
Well, he's the Stuttgart captain and captain of the Japanese national team.
Okay. What do you think? So, I mean, I'll be honest, I've not watched Stuttgart. And the only time I watched the Japanese national team is when they win the World Cup, when they qualified ahead of Germany, I think it was, and topped the group ahead of Spain. So I'll be honest, I know SB, you're a Liverpool fan, but I just find it weird that you won't go from what? Well, it was Bellingham. Then it was Tukumene. Then it was Bellingham. Then it was what was it? Caicedo after Bellingham, and then it was Lavia, and now you have this Endo guy. So it just seems. But I mean, big up to you guys. At least you have a list, and you go after the players you've scouted. You have a list. United don't have a list.
I don't understand the thing with Liverpool though, and they bid 111 pounds, 111 million pounds for Caicedo, but they didn't have the money to buy Bellingham or Tchouaméni for a lot less than what that would have costed. Bellingham in total, I think, costs. I could be wrong. I think it cost 90 million euros or 95 million euros. It costs at least 80 million pounds. I know that. It just doesn't make sense. But what they've done, the problem is, they made that bid and they were prepared to make the actual transfer happen. They'd scheduled medical and everything. But obviously the turmoil that happened with the player where he didn't want to go there and everything sort of kicked off from there. Lavia was the main player, midfielder that they was going for. They had an agreement in principle with Southampton on terms. The player was interested in going to Liverpool. However, as soon as they got whiff that Caicedo was there to be taken because Chelsea were faltering on the actual deal and the structure of it, they thought, right, we're going to capitalise it. We're going to buy him. Let's put in a world record bid. Let's blow Chelsea out the water. They won't come back. We'll convince him. We'll get the better player. And when they didn't get Caicedo, Lavia's looked at the situation and thought, so I wasn't even your priority. So everything that you told me was complete blabble. And he's gone to Chelsea instead. Both of them. But the problem Liverpool have now is they have put an extra 20, 30 million pounds on any midfielders that they buy. And this Endu guy, for example, yes, they've got him for 19 million pounds, I think it is. But that's a really, I would have called it in many cases. I think if any of our teams would have signed a guy like this, you would have said it's underwhelming going from the names that you've just mentioned to this. It is underwhelming. But if Liverpool go out and buy another midfielder after this, you've still got 90 plus million pounds. You were prepared to pay over the odds to get Caicedo. So we know you've got 90 million. If they, as it's, as I understand it anyway, that they are interested in Amrabat, but he's giving priority to Manchester United. If Liverpool came into the race now for Amrabat and they put in a bid of, say, 20 million euros, Florentino could say, now we want 50. We want 50 million euros. You guys have got 90 million pounds there. Like, we know you put in a world record bid for somebody. They're going to get, if they go for a top name midfielder, they're going to get fleeced. Put it that way. And that's the problem that they've done. They took a risk, major gamble, and it's, well, I don't even know if it's even compatible to say it blew up in their face. I think a nuclear bomb's gone off really at Liverpool when they didn't get either of the two players. You would have thought they were getting one of them, but to not even get any of them, it is embarrassing. It really is embarrassing. And if that happened at Man United, I mean, wow. Yeah, could you imagine the turmoil that would happen here if that happened to Manchester United?
It would be annoying.
It would be absolutely crazy.
Speaking of United and Arsenal, we'll come back to the questions in a second, but just having a brief pause. So let's talk let's briefly just speaking up about the whole United transfer chaos thing, because we went from link to Pavard, Todibo for defense, Amrabat for a new midfielder, to Maguire staying, McTominay staying. It looks like we can't sell by Van der Beek. I don't even know what's happening with that. There were talks about
stalled. Yeah,
it looks like that's stalled. So it's almost like every single, thing is stored. We've only really been able to sell. Basically the highest paid player we were able to sell was
Alanga
for 15 million. Fred, I think 10 million if I recall. Then you having to go down to Iqbal, etc. And I think Tellez was Tellez 5, I think 5 or 10 million maybe.
12 million euros, something like that. Yeah, it'll work out. Yeah.
So but all the other deals, Dean Henderson was supposed to go to Nottingham Forest. That's stored. Maguire, West Ham offered about 30 million. We said no. Why? I have no idea, because his value is going to go down if he doesn't play. McTominay, we need to keep it from. So I mean, what do you think about the whole this whole mess right now? Because basically the transfer window is going to close in the 19th, and it closed on the 1st of September. So it's
12
closing
days.
In 12 days. 12 days. Can United realistically get these outgoings done and also get significant incomings in 12 days' time? And if so, what and who?
Well, I've always stood by the same point, and I think really I've been proved right with what I've said, where in terms of bringing in another midfielder, they have to sell 2 out of the 3. I always insisted and said that United, if they want to invest in a new midfielder, 2 of the 3 of Fred, McTominay and Van der Beek have to go. We know McTominay's staying, Fred's already gone, and Van der Beek is faltering. It's stalled right now because they've hit an impasse with Sociedad, because Sociedad don't want to be obligated to buy him if he doesn't work out. They want an option, not an obligation. So there's a problem and there's a roadblock there. I think probably the best place to start would be on maybe Harry Maguire. The deal that was there with Maguire was that Manchester United had actually agreed a fee. They had already agreed £30 million. West Ham United, it was finalised. They'd agreed the fee. That's the most difficult thing that you can do in a transfer, is the 2 clubs have to agree on the transfer and the actual fee. The player in Harry Maguire, he was prepared to move to West Ham. So anything that's saying that he wasn't prepared to go, he didn't want to go, yada so forth, he was prepared to leave Manchester United. However, he wanted a £9 million payoff to cover his wages that he would be losing in a reduction over the rest of his contract right now to move to West Ham, because they weren't offering him the same terms as what he was getting at United. As far as I was aware, he was being offered upwards of 135, 150 million pounds per week. K per week. So, thousands. Yeah, sorry. 150,000 pounds per week to go to West Ham, which reasonably, I think that's a fair, decent deal. And I think he's roughly on about £210,000 per week. I think he's roughly on about that. So it is a reduction, yes, but it's not massive to the point that some people would have thought, oh, I shouldn't even get 100k, let alone 210 or whatever. So the reason why this deal has collapsed is no fault of Manchester United. It's no fault of West Ham. If I'm being solely honest, this is on Harry Maguire. The reason this move has not happened is based upon he has demanded a payout and settlement which Manchester United were not willing to give him. And you know what? I actually applaud them for that. Why are you going to pay a player off of his contract and what he's owed to let him leave? Why? Whenever do you hear this at any football club that you have to pay a player to leave that you've already agreed a fee with to go somewhere else and they're prepared to go there, but they just want what? To fleece you? It's ridiculous. It never happens anywhere. Are you seriously telling me that Jordan Henderson, I think he had 2 years left in his contract, he was fleecing Liverpool to say, oh, give us a payoff, lads, before I go to Saudi and make millions? Was he really saying that? No, he wasn't. And he's in the same situation Harry Maguire was, captain of his football club. And Harry Maguire, if we're being realistic, he was still the captain at the time because we didn't play a game. So he technically was still the captain, even though Fernandes was named at it. But this is what I mean. So based upon that deal, Harry Maguire is the main causing reason as to why that deal faltered and is no longer happening. Again, things can change. Maybe United might agree. Do you know what? Sod it, we'll pay you. Go. And if United gave him that £9 million payoff, he would have gone. There was no issues on the personal terms. There was no issues on the fee. So long as he passed the medical, signed, sealed, David Moyes wanted him. That was it. Everything was in place for him to go. So the reason the deal has not happened is because Harry Maguire wanted a settlement payout to leave the football club, for which the club didn't agree to. Therefore, it's collapsed. But again, things can happen. People can change their mind or whatever, and we'll see. Scott McTominay, again, West Ham offered, I think it was £30 million up front and £5 million in add-ons. I think they offered £35 million in total. United had always valued Scott McTominay at £40 million minimum. And the reason being is because he's a youth player. Anything that they would make from a sale, they don't have sell-on clauses. They don't have any money that they bought him for and, net profits and losses. It's straight onto the books. So they want as much money for him as they can. And they really priced themselves out of the market for selling Scott McTominay, if I'm honest. And I think there's two reasons for that. One, because there's a lot within the coaching staff that don't want Scott McTominay to go because they see him as a good squad player. That's what they see him as. They don't see him as a first team superstar quality player, but as a squad player, he's the best that they've got on the midfield. That's what they think, and that's what they assess and believe. If they were going to go out in the market and buy a squad player, that's the sort of player that they would profile to try and get. And he's happy to sit on the bench. So that's another bonus as well. He's happy to play that role for United, which I think is a good thing. And in other words, from what I heard anyway, regarding Erik ten Hag's sort of relationship with him, he looks at Scott McTominay and says, he's a player that would run through brick walls for me. And those are the sort of players that I want at this team, that actually want to fight, if you like, for their place. If you don't want to fight for your place, what are you doing here? There's no point in you being here then. And if you're not ready to play, or I don't believe you're good enough to play, I won't play you. He said he did the same thing with Garnacho last year. Hence, every United fan would say, why is Sancho playing? Why is Rashford playing? Why is Anthony playing? Why don't we unleash Garnacho? Because he said that he wasn't ready. But now he believes that Garnacho is ready, so he plays. So I guess that's the summary both on Maguire and Scott McTominay. McTominay was really priced out of the market, but it would have taken a lucrative offer for them to sell. And West Ham, again, they've did no wrong in the Harry Maguire deal. Same thing with United. It was down to the player. And you can look at it from, it might be Harry Maguire personally, but I wouldn't put the blame and lambast it completely on him because I think his agent will have had a hand to play in that as well. You can fleece Manchester United. You tell them to pay you off. You can get more money out of the. You tell them to pay your contract off and you'll go. Hold them to ransom, Harry. And it's backfired and it's blew up in his face. So he looks like he's going to stay now.
Yeah. Thanks for the update regarding certainly McTominay and Maguire. And, now obviously reports coming out that Maguire may be basically, reports. I've looked at the squad to go into Spurs, and Maguire is not part of the squad. And as far as I'm aware, Maguire isn't injured. So, it looks like to me anyway that Ten Hag has possibly begun to freeze him out of the squad because, it's not part of his plans. Because why isn't he going down the squad? You know what I mean? So that says something to me. It's just kind of like, okay, fine. Well, so as far as I'm concerned, Maguire is in a worse position than he was at the beginning, because at least before this whole link to West Ham move and the whole payout thing, Ten Hag might have considered him to be at least in his plans, and he was obviously on the bench against Wolves. He was involved. Now, he's not. So yeah, it's a bit peak, to be honest. So you talk about Maguire, talk about McTominay. I briefly touched on Van der Beek. So what about obviously the incomings? What about Amrabat? Is there literally any connection or links at all, or all these things stored / broken fall through, Tom?
There's not necessarily been a fall through on any of the offers. The signing a centre back was dependent upon Harry Maguire was going to be sold. That's what they wanted. They wanted one in, one out. That was the process for the centre back. Midfield was, we want 2 of 3 out and get one in, which makes up for the numbers. And Kobe Mainoo would have made up for the other midfielder, but he got injured. That was the thinking and the plan from the recruitment team and also the coaching staff. That was the agreement. Kobe Mainoo is going to step up and be one of the senior players for the year and for the season. And we're going to bring in another midfielder if we can sell 2 or 3 names. It's got McTominay, Van der Beek, and Fred. They've got rid of one. One of them could be sold or loaned out with option to buy or obligation, whatever, in Donny van der Beek. And the other one you turned down money for anyway because it didn't meet the mould of your offer, which he wasn't a player that was actively looking to be sold anyway. So you can look at it from that perspective for midfield. In terms of defence, I've always heard the listing of Pavard, Todibo, and Tapsoba in that order of preference. That was Eric Ten Hag's preference of, if Harry Maguire goes to West Ham, you get me one of those 3. If Pavard's a no starter, we buy in, move on, go and get me Todibo. You can't get Todibo, go and get me Tapsoba. That was how he listed those players. He wanted one of those 3 in that order. Pavard he liked a lot better based upon his ability to play centre-back, but also his capabilities to fill in at right-back as well, which, again, that's an option that a lot of people are questioning to say, do we need a new right-back? It's not a priority, but it's a position that could be fulfilled by Benjamin Pavard if he was to be brought in. And, again, that deal doesn't look likely to happen now, nor does any of the deals look likely to happen for a centre-back if Harry Maguire stays, because it had been put into the recruitment planning and processing and thinking that if we get rid of Harry Maguire, we need to bring in one more because we only have 3 starting centre-backs in Martinez. Varane, we know, is an injury crisis waiting to happen. Lindelof's your backup. So Varane gets injured, you chuck Lindelof in there, suddenly you've got nobody. You've got Luke Shaw, that's it. And he's not even a designated centre-back out of the 4. So he wants 4 centre-backs, designated centre-backs who know the role and play it week in, week out in the club. And Harry Maguire looks like he's staying, so he's going to fill the 4th role. But if something changes again, United might look into the market and go for one of the players. If Pavard looks looking like it'll go to Inter, Pavard wants to leave Bayern Munich at all costs. He doesn't want to sign a new contract. He wants out of Munich. He wants to go and play football somewhere else for another team. Inter Milan look like they're going to agree a €30 million, €25 million deal with him. So good luck to the lad. He deserves to go play somewhere else then. But he wanted to come to Manchester United. That's what I heard from the Pavard side of things, was him and his agent were looking actively when they understood United were interested in him. Should Harry Maguire leave Manchester United, they wanted to go to Manchester United. That was the feeling. If it was here and now and United were prepared to put in the offer and go for him full steam ahead, he would choose United. But they're not doing that because they're not selling Harry Maguire anymore. So unless situation change and he's still available, it's a different situation. In terms of incomings for midfield, as far as I understood it, they have a list of targets. But the one that Erik ten Hag and the recruitment team are in agreement on is Sofyan Amrabat. That's the one that they want. There has been other links. Onana, for example, at Everton has been one of the links. That's more based upon athleticism and him as an actual physical presence within duels. But they've always valued Sofyan Amrabat as a player. And personal terms, as far as I'm aware, between the club and the player shouldn't be an issue because they've been negotiating on terms since June. And the player's always given priority to Manchester United over any club. Barcelona have been in contact with Fiorentina. Liverpool have been in contact with Fiorentina. Chelsea, when they were looking at midfielders, were looking at Sofyan Amrabat and contacted Fiorentina. There is many European clubs that have contacted Fiorentina for Sofyan Amrabat. And the clubs know the price, but when they've spoken from the player's perspective and the player's side, they're saying Manchester United is where he wants to go. Unless that doesn't happen, we'll go with you guys. But my client wants to go to Manchester United. And there appears anyway now to be that there is a gentleman's agreement. And I know that's never a good thing to say between United and Amrabat in terms of we will come for you when we sell the players we need to sell. That's the sort of feeling and that's the sort of wording coming from Sofyan Amrabat's sort of camp and his agency is we have an agreement with United. When they sell the players, they're coming for you. So we'll wait. And he wants to wait for Manchester United. That's the one thing that I know with Amrabat. He's prepared to wait. And he has waited long enough. We have to be fair in saying that. 12 days to go to the end of the window. It's a long time to wait. But if they can shift another one of the midfielders or they get some money in for a different profile of a player, a Henderson or somebody like that, then they'll move for Amrabat straight away. No questions asked. Put the official bid in, negotiate the terms with Fiorentina. Personal terms won't be an issue. Amrabat will be a United player. No problem at all. But unless they can shift more of the players that they have in the squad right now, they can't invest anymore because of the FFP. They already overspent on Højlund. They already overspent what they wanted to on Mount. They already overspent on what they wanted to do for the players that they brought in. The only deal that they was actually happy with, as far as I'm aware, the recruitment team, for what they paid, was Onana. That's it. They felt like they could have got more out of the deal for Højlund, but the options on the market were thin, so they thought, we're going to have to get him now. PSG were breathing down the neck, so they had to get him. They also had the situation with Mason Mount where we need to get the player because we're at a roadblock. Chelsea aren't blinking. We're not blinking. But the player desperately wants to come.
I still don't understand. The Mason Mount one out of all the three is the one I don't understand the most because one, I still don't understand things that we needed Mason Mount. And even then, out of all of those three, he was the only one that had 1 year left on his contract. So you mean to tell me, I know Levy wouldn't sell Kane to United, so I get that. But you mean to tell me that like you're gonna go all out to get, you're saying we're not gonna go all out to get Kane because he's got 1 year's contract and Levy will fleece us, but you're gonna go all out to get Mason Mount, who's also got 1 year in his contract and overpay. No, like you call when a player's got 1 year's contract, it says no. You call their bluff and say we're not going to pay your terms. And we can speak to the player in January, and then by then he's gone in 6 months, so you probably accept reduced terms. It's a Mason. So I don't know.
The club though, the thing that I knew anyway with the club was that they stood by Erik ten Hag when he made his listings and his coaching staff made the listings of the players that they wanted. Harry Kane was the number one target coming into this summer window. And through intermediaries, they didn't get the feeling that Daniel Levy was willing to sell for a realistic price with 1 year left on his contract. So they went to Erik ten Hag and said, Harry Kane's a no-starter, unfortunately. We'll target another striker for you, but what's the next best thing? What's the next profile, best player that you want us to try and get you? And he said Mason Mount. I've followed him for years. He's a brilliant profile of the player of how I want to play. Transitional football, can beat the man on the half turn, good, decent passer of the ball, pressing, tactical instructions, the lot. He's a brilliant player for my system. Go and get me him. That's the priority now. And they went all out and they've gone and got him. But again, we're going to see if it's going to blow up in the manager's face and the team and the recruitment team's face. And this is where I always say you need a world-class operating football director at a football club. Man, and as much as people say a manager and a football director have got to agree, I think it's best when they don't agree. I think that's a better working relationship between the two. You should never agree straight away on a player as a recruitment team. Never. Liverpool, for example, the best example I can use, Michael Edwards, who was their transfer guru, expert, football director, whatever you wanted to call him. Liverpool and Jurgen Klopp wanted Julian Brandt. That was their player that they wanted, and he wanted desperately from Bayer Leverkusen. But Michael Edwards had the bollocks to stand up to Jurgen Klopp, who was rebuilding Liverpool at the time, and said, no, there's a young player, brilliantly technical ability, direct, one of the leading stat padders in European football at AS Roma called Mohamed Salah. He would be the better player for your style of football. Trust me. They went with Michael Edwards' opinion, the board, and they agreed with his opinion. And Mo Salah's been what in the Premier League? Arguably one of the best players in the Premier League, if not the world, in the last 4 or 5 years. And the rest is history. And that little story that I've just said there never gets talked about enough. So John Murtough, do I honestly believe that he would have the bollocks to stand up to a manager and say, no, we're not going with your plans because I believe that there's a better player here? No, I don't think he would. I don't think he would.
It's also the track record, though, as well. Like, they don't have a particularly good track record either. And quite frankly, we did have a guy in Ralph Ragnick who for me could have done that role, but then they said, "Oh, we don't want him." So
you can look at it from this perspective. 2 windows Erik ten Hag's coming, summer windows. He's laid out his priority at the start of the window. This window was Harry Kane. Last summer it was Frankie de Jong. He's got neither of them.
Yeah,
he's not got any of them. And the pathetic thing is that they actually got an agreement for de Jong, but the player never wanted to come.
Yeah.
How can you go for 3 months negotiating a deal for a player that doesn't end up wanting to come? It's ridiculous.
Exactly.
And the thing with Kane, and it's pathetic. Yeah, and it's pathetic with the Kane thing because even if you don't think you're going to get him, the fact that I hate for Manchester United's perspective, I'm speaking on behalf of a fan here, is they didn't even try. That's the thing that annoys me. I don't care if you don't get the player. That's fine. I can settle if you're getting ripped off. But do actually test them. I don't care if it was 70. I don't care if it was 80. I don't even care if it was 50 million. Put a bid in and see what they say. Because you never know. You might actually get surprised with some people. And in the end, Daniel Levy did cede and he sold Harry Kane when he didn't actually want to sell him. And ultimately, they've got the money. You know, the ball rolls on. But merely for me, people talk about Murtough madness and how it's a big thing. I think it's a load of crap, if I'm honest. I'll be really honest. 2 summers, Erik ten Hag's come with priority targets, and he's got neither of them for him. Neither of them. Didn't get Harry Kane, didn't get Frankie de Jong. And he's supposed to be Manchester United's brilliant sporting director. It's a joke. Chelsea, every single window that they've gone into, even the January window, which is the hardest market to ever operate in, they got the priority target, Enzo Fernandez. This window, Moises Caicedo was the player that they're targeting. All window, they've eventually got him. Big football clubs with proper sporting directors get them priority players that the manager wants in the end, even if they don't get them when they want them straight away. They end up getting them. We drag the whole summer out and then don't end up getting the players. But then, because clubs know we have that sort of money, they then ridiculously make us overpay for people and make us look stupid. And at the end of the day, this Myrtle Madness, I mean, he spent more than what the FFP regulations state. He can't sell players. I think that's very clear. You literally have a liquid pit of cash that you can get rid of players for in Saudi Arabia, and you've sold one. You've sold one fringe player where there is 3 City players that look likely that they're going to be sold to that league. Liverpool, there's 3 players from there that spring to mind that have gone there. Chelsea, they've had an absolute car boot sale to Saudi Arabia. And they've brought in probably upwards of £80 million from there in fringe players. Manchester United have sold players like Sedan Iqbal for less than what it would cost for a 2-bedroom flat in London. It's ridiculous. You're having it today where Lewis, I think his name is Lewis Hall anyway, from Chelsea, is going to Newcastle in a loan deal with an option to buy for £35 million. He's made 9 first-team appearances for Chelsea. James Trafford of Manchester City never even made a senior appearance. Has gone to Burnley for 19 million. And Manchester United, who have an international player such as an Anthony Elanga, Champions League goal-scoring moment against Atletico Madrid, and they only scraped £15 million off a Forest.
15.
He sums this football club up rightly.
Yeah, it's a joke. It's a joke. That's why we're not seeing
everybody's saying Myrtle Madness. Everybody's saying Myrtle Madness, G. But where's the madness?
Yeah, it is madness. That's the thing. It is.
It is madness, but it's not the good kind of madness.
It's not the good kind of madness, man. Like just delusional. Some fans. Right, before we go on to the United review, let me just quickly go into chat and see any questions. Obviously, for those who are watching, smash a like and get your questions in. We'll probably be going for another maybe 15 or so minutes. So let's have a look. Ask me again says, do you guys think this is how Erik ten Hag should set us up when hitting teams on the transition? Because Erik ten Hag did say he wants us to become the best transition team in Europe. Well, that's going to take a while. So I assume that's referring to deep line playmaker for Bruno with Casemiro as a destroyer. Eriksen as advanced 8 to 9 ball carrying. Mount should play on the right. That will help us become fluid in possession. Right wing. And Eriksen on the right side of midfield. So should they be? I guess. But it's worth. I mean, I think the problem is that, like, what was the point in preseason? Like what annoys me is, like, if we're not going to do all of this experimentation, I know we don't necessarily have the players, but we had Mount and Onana, certainly Mount anyway, and Heaton's somewhat decent with his feet. So why is it that we always? I'm not saying as a manager you can't experiment or change things in the season. But why are we still experimenting with the lineup, with how the team play, now the season has started? Okay, we tried Sanchez at 9, that could work. Like, why are we having to do this when the season? I don't get it. All those players, with the exception of Mount, and even then he went with them to the States, were available. Why couldn't you practice doing it then? Like, it's the obsession. Like, oh yes, we beat Arsenal. Okay, great, but this is the time that you're supposed to experiment, not just win games for the sake of winning games. You can use it and go, oh, if we do that, or if we lose against Arsenal, fine, let's try and change it to something else. I don't know. It's annoying.
Yeah. I mean, from what I've looked at, I think when Ten Hag came in, everybody jumped on the wagon of, we're going to play like Pep. He's got the same philosophy, the way that the Ajax sort of style of play, the Johan Cruyff model of way to play football. everybody jumped on the wagon and they thought, we're going to control games, we're going to play tiki-taka, we're going to batter people off the field and so forth, and Old Trafford will be a fortress and we'll rock up at somebody's yard and we'll rip them apart 5-6-0 week in, week out. But it's not working out like that. And the thing that I think that Ten Hag's trying to emulate is, I really, really think that he wants United to play a lot similar to how Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool played in those 3-4 years where they went for the title with City, where you press from the front, you win the ball high up, and you transition on teams in the final third. That's how I think Erik ten Hag wants to play. I don't think he cares about having 60-70% of possession. I think he cares about winning the ball in the opposition's half, running direct at them, and scoring 3-4 goals. That's how I think he wants to play. And I think similar to how Liverpool are when their defence was shocking, you're going to see a lot of games. If United had clinical goal scorers, United will concede a lot more goals this season, I think, in comparison to last season, because they're going to be a lot more open because of the play style and how they want to play. Halfway line football, the goalkeeper as well, I think, is an argument to say that they're going to concede more. They will, because they're going to get counter-attacked on more, and teams are going to be a lot more ruthless than Wolves were. Let's be honest. But in the way that Ten Hag wants to play, if United have clinical goal scorers, United should be winning games 4-3, 3-2, something like that. That's how I believe United should be winning games this season. I don't expect to see 1-0 scrappy results away at Wolves or away at Villa, wherever. I don't expect to be seeing these results. And as playing, really compact, low-block football, I don't think it's going to happen. I think Ten Hag's going to take the risks in trying to play his way of playing. He's brought in the goalkeeper that can do it. He's apparently brought in a midfielder that can play that way in Mason Mount. And he's brought in a number 9 that suits that profile in Rasmus Højlund. So let's see it. We need to see it now, Eric. And the best way that I think he's going to try and do is play the way that Liverpool and Jurgen Klopp injected into those players was, we press from the front, we win the ball high up the field, and we punish teams. That's how I think he wants this Manchester United team to play. And if I'm being honest, against the best teams in Europe, nowadays, that's how you've got to play if you want to win. You can't play low-block football against PSG, against the Real Madrid, against anyone. They'll break you down eventually. City, they break you down eventually, unfortunately. City, when they're actually on the transition and counter-attack, I think they're dangerous, but they don't play like that. They would rather recycle the ball and break teams down. Let them get back into shape and we'll break you down. That's City. Man United are completely different in how I think Ten Hag wants to play. Long stretched outfield at Old Trafford, win the ball high up, play on the transition, and we'll punish teams. But again, if that's how he wants to play, he doesn't have I don't think he's got the attacking output for that. I really don't, because I don't think a lot of our players are ruthless enough in front of goal. And they don't work as a team. So you need the balance of ruthlessness from players, but also who are prepared to work for the team. And I think you've got a lot of gun-ho people. Anthony, if you give him the chance to shoot, he'll shoot. Rashford, you give him the chance to shoot, he'll shoot. These players will not lay the ball off for a pass. That's the problem.
Yes, exactly.
You need to bring in players that are going to do it. Whereas Sancho, you would say arguably, is more on the other trajectory. He would rather pass than have a go at goal. So there needs to be a balance of decision-making. Know when to pass, know when to shoot. But there's not that decision-making with United. So, again, when you play against a low-block team, United, like against Wolves, for example, they need to know how to unlock teams. Because you're going to play against a lot more of them teams than you are the big boy teams. But when you go against City or somebody like that, and that's the perfect test for me to see how Ten Hag wants to play this team. Perfect test. If you want to play transitional football, we need to see the best football from Marcus Rashford, from Rasmus Højlund, from Mount, from Fernandes, from Casemiro, from all of them. That's when you need to see it, because that's the best emulation of how you can see a team play transitional football. Because if you want to play transitional football, Liverpool have been the best at it for 3-4 years with Jurgen Klopp. And arguably the best games that I've ever seen Liverpool play in Jurgen Klopp style of play have been against Manchester City. So if he's trying to emulate that, Manchester City is the best game to emulate that against them, because they will give you that space to transition on if you can catch them in possession.
Fair enough. Let's keep on moving. But thanks for that RSV. Obviously, as you can tell, RSV is actually as are quite a few people members of this channel currently. We will be doing a members only stream on Sunday evening, and I will post the topics. Post the topics you want to discuss. There'll be a primary topic, and then if there's specific topics that members want to discuss, post it in the membership tab. That'll be going there soon. So just bear that in mind as well, and hopefully as we can now be able to record one or two member exclusive videos for you guys as well. I'm gonna be real. I don't think Liverpool rates Lavia as high as people think. Liverpool didn't want to give up 50 million for him. I do agree with that. I think Caicedo, yes. I think Liverpool rate Caicedo because of nature, but I think that Lavia, looks good, but he was relegated with Southampton. So I don't know. I think that this idea that Lavia is now some sort of Don midfielder, so it remains to be seen. And I think Caicedo will improve Chelsea, but again, so I've yet to see Chelsea sign someone from Brighton that succeeded yet, and that includes their former manager Graham Potter. So we'll see what happens. The guy who Liverpool are mainly after right now is Decore from Crystal Palace. Palace going to fleece. We're going to exactly. You're going to have to. I think, as Thomas said, whoever Liverpool, whichever midfield they go for, at the end of the day, they're going to get fleeced. But the reality is, at least you are going for midfielders. At least you're going for players. What are United doing? So like the fact that people can be happy going into a season essentially with Onana and Mount to improve this team is an absolute joke. Onana and Mount. And Onana was a replacement for David De Gea, and Mount, goodness knows what his job is. And Rasmus, we don't know when the dude is going to be injured. To be honest, the only hope I had going was I'm thinking maybe Rasmus might ball, he might improve up top, and then Kobe Mainoo in the midfield to give us some spokes so he looked good. Both of those players are unavailable. So as far as I'm concerned, the season doesn't start until those players are there or we get more signings in, because otherwise the squad actually looks worse in my opinion. With the exception of the back four, five, we can argue that it's worse. David says slab pad isn't only a name. Man's head is made of titanium and concrete. He's too stubborn. Don't disagree with that. AD with the question. Hope you're still watching. AD, favorite games of last season. I'll just put this one. Favorite game of last season. Let me think.
I would have said City at home. 2-1. That would have been my favorite. That would have been my favorite game. City at home 2-1.
When we dunked on Chelsea, was that my favorite game? Nah, because Chelsea were crap at that point when it came to Old Trafford.
The Arsenal game was good as well. To be fair,
the Arsenal game was
3-1.
pretty good. The Arsenal game at Old Trafford, I think, was pretty good.
We didn't really lopside a team that many.
Not particularly.
I don't think we scored more than 4. I mean, the Barcelona game as well, over the 2 legs. I think that was good.
That's a good thing. That's a good point. I would say I enjoyed the Barcelona games, home and away. I thought they were really good. That was kind of like the best. If we're talking about in terms of the United, that was kind of the best I saw in terms of entertainment wise of Manchester United last season was the Barcelona games. And AD, you are Barcelona fans, so yeah, hopefully you guys don't drop to Europa League again this season, man. And yeah, this is why we need Michael Edwards, Paul Mitchell once we get new owners. Hopefully, would have loved Rotherham back inside once we get new owners. Ragnick recommended the board to sign Badashiel and Cuckoo, Caicedo, Enzo, and Alvarez when they're still in South America. Yep, he did. But don't listen to that guy. Focus on Murder Madness and listening to the manager. So I don't know. People focus more on Ralph Ragnick because he was negative because he wasn't a good manager, even though the whole point was that he was going to be a sporting director, etc. but they say it's crap because of that. And now we're getting Mason Mount as world
But
class.
yeah, I mean, GG. Let's be honest though. If you had Ragnick over your shoulder as John Murtough, and you know this guy's got the world experience that he says that he does, he's going to show you up. He'll put John Murtough out of a job. Let's be honest, he would.
Well,
he would have put him out of a job.
Well, he's gonna. Now he's going to have to take the scrutiny of the whole Greenwood situation. So there you go. So I wonder how he's going to do that. Whereas it would have been Ragnick that would have to have dealt with that. And I'm assuming he would have been able to easily identify someone to replace him. But anyway, won't talk about that. Yeah, definitely. After all, Everton had help. After all, Everton had help from Mark Overmars at Ajax. Everton and first signs at Ajax were all flops, with Sebastian Haller, none were recommended by Overmars. Exactly. But again, are Manchester United fans really going to be bearing this in mind? No, I do not. But it's true. Tom, what is Manchester United's situation with FFP? Would Manchester United fans be okay with breaking FFP if it means to get the player? What's your thoughts on that, Tom?
Well, the way that FFP works is that it's regulated to what you actually spend up until the January window. So at the end of a turnover of a year, not a season. That's how FFP works. So effectively, you could have a situation where you could overspend now in terms of buying players. United could break the, breach FFP now to buy Amrabat, to buy Todibo, to buy whoever. But whatever they've bought those players for in excess of the FFP regulations. So let's just call it. Say they've bought those two players for, I don't know, let's call it around 60 million. You would need, and United's regulations state that they're in breach by over 40 million pounds. They would need to make 40 million pounds in the remainder of this window and also the January window. And if they don't, then they would breach the FFP regulations. And with how United operate from selling players, I don't really think it's a smart thing to breach them in the first place. You only breach the regulations if you know that you can sell the players to then make up for it later on. Hence, for example, with Chelsea, sign all the players on 6, 7, 8 year contracts. You pay them over the instalment periods with the football clubs, but also, because you've done that, the FFP regulations aren't going to recuperate you that much because, in total, you might have spent £320 million in a window, but really, this window, you're only spending 160 on maybe, 5 players that you've bought? And then, depending on how much you've paid for each individual player, you just pay that in the installments for the next window, then the next, then the next, then the next, until they're all paid off. And again, you get to the situation where with FFP, it doesn't hurt you for, say, Chelsea, because they've sold it upwards of, 150 million pounds worth of players. I mean, Mount and Havertz, they made all of their January sort of saga in terms of people were accusing them of they've breached the FFP rules, surely, and this, that, the other. As soon as Havertz and Mount were sold, that was gone. So everything that madness that they did in January was solved when they sold those two players. Manchester United could never do that. That's the difference. United could never sell. I'm telling you, if Manchester United had Havertz and Mount, and they were trying to sell those two players, if I'm being completely honest, I don't even think they would have sold them. I don't even think they would have sold them. And it's not because that I think they're bad players, because I think on the day there's a player in Havertz, there's a player in Mount. But I just don't think they have the ability to sell to anybody. I really, really don't. And I mean, it shocks me that, a Real Madrid, a Barcelona, a super club never come in for one of United's best players. They never do it. You never have a situation where PSG, they'll come in for Marcus Rashford. And we'll offer you 80 million, 90, 100, whatever. It never happens. Fernandes will offer you however much money. It never happens. And it might just be a case of United are just poor. They are poor. But the problem, as I say, with United is they can't sell fringe players. That's the situation. And these fringe players, it's either you pay them off or you keep them on the books until they run out of contract. And for a lot of them, that looks like how they're going to do it. But even the situation. I mean, they're in negotiations to offer Johnny Evans a 1-year contract for this season, as far as I'm aware. I mean,
Wow.
he
But
sums it up.
but you can't get rid of Maguire, so I don't know.
You can't get rid of Maguire, but it also doesn't cost you anything because he's a free agent. So, I mean, if you want to use it like that, I mean, Ten Hag can easily just use that as well. I can freeze Harry Maguire out of the squad now. I've got that fourth centre back, but it's not the centre back that everybody wants. But again, if the ownership situation would have been sorted and dewed over, as far as I was aware, if it was a debt-free Manchester United, as Sheikh Jassim was offering to buy Manchester United, he could have added £60 million to this budget that they had this summer. So effectively, they would have had 100. They would have had 200 million again, and they wouldn't have breached the FFP because they don't have the debts that are on the club. Therefore, the debts don't recuperate towards FFP. So again, it's the problem and it's the situation. United are always shackled by the debt, but also the fact that they have incompetent negotiators to sell their players. Don't get me wrong, I think they've negotiated well for the players that they've bought. They've negotiated the mount price down from 80 to 60, so they've saved 20. They've negotiated the Onana thing down from 50 to 43, and they negotiate the Højlund one down from upwards of £85 million to around about 60 as an initial payment, and then the rest built up in instalments. So they have saved money, but they haven't sold players well at all. That's the difference.
No, I agree. Mega says, look at Spurs, look at Brighton. They play better football than us. Yeah, so far. I don't disagree with that, Mega. John Merton, Dan Fletcher, which are all Glazers, yes, men. This John Merton man start fans for just Ludens or pure. I mean, I don't know whether I'm supposed to. Big up Stephanie Griffin in the chat. Thank you so much. Your moderator doing it really well and appreciate it, Stephanie, for joining us, man. So big up RDS Tom and the chat. Stephanie also says, why is it suddenly the law to play inverted forward wingers? Surely worth giving Anthony a goal on the left to use his stronger foot in an interchangeable front three. That's an interesting. That's an interesting issue. I actually don't know. I don't know when it became a thing that you have to do that. Because sometimes I don't thought, why don't we play Anthony on the left? Like, he's so one-footed. Why doesn't he come from the left and play? It's like, but I guess again with the players we have with the squad. And especially if Højlund comes in, then Rashford, in order to get Rashford in the team, you're going to have to play Rashford on the left. He's not going to go on the right. So you could do that now if Rashford is the number 9, and put Anthony on the left and maybe put Sancho on the right, try that. Maybe Palestri on the right, try that. But I suspect when Højlund comes and we actually play with a striker, Rashford will go on the left. And I don't think that's going to change. At least that's what I think, Stephanie. But yeah, I hear you on the point. Tom, the truth is absolutely spot on. Our players need to cut out, kick, run, and shoot on-site football. Yes, and I agree with that as well. I'm sure Tom agreed. Well, Tom said it. We agree with it as well because but that requires discipline, and also that requires. I'm still yet to see really the team ethic or dynamic in this squad. I still see a bunch of, at times, especially up front. Defensively, I can see the togetherness, but like when you leave the defense, midfield, and attackers, like the togetherness just isn't there.
There's no balance.
That's something that needs to change.
Yeah. There's no balance. Is there up front? That's the problem.
No. 30 likes. Yeah, come on. 20 people watching, guys. Come on, let's get to 20 likes at least. 20 likes in the video. Come on, it'd be good. I'll ask you a question for Tom. Didn't Liverpool play more possession-based football and refining gegenpressing and playing out from the back with Robbo and Trent as main creators from the start of the 2018 to 2019 season?
You could argue that they did, yes, but they had the defensive cover to play out from the back then. You had a lot younger of a version of an Andy Robertson than you have now, who could get up and down that left-hand side and, he could be an impact in the final third and the attacking thirds to cross the ball in, but he could also not be an incompetent defender. So out of the, and if I'm being out of the two of them, I thought in that sort of era, Robertson was actually more creditable to the team than Trent, in my opinion, because he wasn't a liability defensively, whereas Trent was always going to have that problem and situation defensively. Whereas in terms of them actually being more a possession-based football team, I get the argument based upon that they had more possession over teams, but when you consider it like this, the amount of teams that you will play in a season that are going to, when they know that you can put 4 or 5 past them with ease, like Liverpool could do in that sort of an era, what are you going to do? You're going to shut up shop. From minute one, you're going to shut up shop and you're going to play on the counter attack. So Liverpool having most of the possession in that sort of era is probably a valid point, yes, based upon the opposition that you're going to be playing week in, week out. But what I was saying was when they go up against the City, that's where you see Liverpool's best football, when they play against the best. The Barcelonas of this world, you saw that what happened with that game. They completely turned it on its head. And that wasn't even down to the superstars, because it was an average team that played that night. But the play style and the actual transition and winning the ball high up in the final third against Barcelona was culpable, and smart thinking was culpable to them winning the game. So I understand the point around more possession, but Liverpool's best football and when they play games to entertain teams have always been against the better teams. That's why when in those 3 seasons or 4 seasons when it was always City Liverpool for the title, that was the fixture, even as a neutral, that everybody looked for. Was Liverpool City at Anfield, Liverpool City at the Etihad. Those 2 games, that was what every single fan looked for, because those were the 2 games in the season that, as a neutral, you sat there and you thought, yeah, I want to watch that because it's a brilliant game. It's a brilliant game. Possession versus transition. And for me, Liverpool, then in that game, I would be shocked if they had more possession over City in any of the games that they've played between Klopp and Pep Guardiola. Because even on an off day for Manchester City, they always average more possession than teams anyway. So at the end of the day, it's culpable to a couple of things, I guess. But they didn't go on to win the league anyway in that season. But they did go on to win the Champions League, for which they played transitional football in the Champions League. And they blew teams away, like I say, 4-0 Liverpool. So, I guess there's a point in case to be said for both. But I understand his point anyway for RSV. So big up to him, man.
Fair enough, Chief. Spurs. So we're going to talk about. So we'll round up in the end. I'll just quickly address one, and we'll a brief conversation about the Spurs game tomorrow. Like I said, I'm not really doing. I used to do a lot of match previews last week, but it's just timing thing really. And also, they weren't getting that many views or people tuning in, so I want to kind of save my energy for other stuff, like the membership stuff, the Q&A, the United Forum, and also the match reactions, as well as the Twitch watch-alongs. So something had to give, and I'm just doing it by myself, obviously with Tom helping out as well. So yeah, but for the big games, so Manchester City, Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea, possibly maybe even Newcastle as well. We'll be doing some match previews and hopefully getting people on from other fan channels to really kind of discuss and break and do combined events and stuff like that as well. But the match reaction will be tomorrow, sometime after the game as well. Mertza was fearful of Ralph, tried to pick his brain and then got rid of him. Don't disagree with that. Another question from RSV says, for Tom, does Joel Glazer still have the ultimate say on recruitment/transfers? Because normally he vetoes every signing and is only interested in shirt sellers with Mertza/Arnold as his puppets.
He's the guy that you go to, that Richard. Well, put it this way: you have the manager and the director of football that decide on the players that they go for. They then go to Richard Arnold and say, "Can we release the funds to buy the player?" And Richard Arnold has to communicate that with the ownership group, which the leader of the ownership group for the Glazer family is Joel Glazer. He's the chairman, him and Avram. So you go to primarily Joel to get the final say off, because he has, as I said before when we was doing the sale update, out of the whole family, he has the most shares individually in Manchester United, out of the whole 6 of them. Therefore, he has the ultimate controlling say over what happens as United, selling a player, buying a player, whatever. That's the guy you go to get everything signed off. But just as much influence is Avram in terms of the day-to-day running of the football club. He's more of the day-to-day guy from the Glazer family in terms of the running of it. But if you want something signing off or you want to sign a player, Joe Glazer signs off on it. And in terms of he's only ever interested in shirt-selling players, shirtless selling players that they've put major money on that never work out, and they don't really recoup them many major finances. I mean, the whole Pogba sort of saga thing, really, it turned out into an absolute farce. I don't really think that they actually made a lot of money. I think they probably undervalued how much they actually made off of that in comparison to what they could have done if he would have been a success at United. He was coming back to be their midfield maestro, their superstar saviour, and he wasn't. He was not that, unfortunately. The only one that you can say that they made superstar money on in terms of a shirt sale is Cristiano Ronaldo, but I don't need to go into the details of why that would happen. You know, he's gone to Al Nassr and he's probably I think he went to Al Nassr. 24 hours later, their Instagram page I think had 3.6 million people following it in 24 hours.
Exactly.
In comparison to, I think they barely had like 25,000. So the impact of having a superstar player, yes, helps you financially, but does it mean that they're going to veto every single signing? Probably not. Based upon that, they trust the people that they have in place right now to run the football club.
Awesome. Another question from Stephanie Griffith. Big up, Stephanie. Question for both. Why don't clubs introduce clauses into players' contracts that force salary not paid if not enough games are played? Surely this will help reduce wages and help getting players out. I mean, I know some of it, but my opinion is that, well, that would make sense potentially if the power is with the club, i.e., you know, let's say a club like Real Madrid, for example, you know, then it makes sense because like players want to and the player desperately wants to come to Real Madrid, definitely wants to come to Barcelona, then yeah, absolutely, that makes sense. But if you're begging players to come, if players need to be convinced financially that they need to come to your club, then you saying into their clause, oh, by the way, you're not going to get a full salary if you don't pay, or go, well, okay, fine, I can go to another place of another club that will offer me more money. It doesn't have that clause in, or I can stay where I am. You know, so that's my opinion of it. It's just with a club like Manchester United, with a few exceptions, you know, like it sounds like Onana obviously wanted to leave. You know, Højlund, you know, players that are coming from maybe smaller clubs going to Manchester United that don't have as much demand, then okay, it works. But you know, you put that into say like Casemiro's contract or Ronaldo's contract, and they'll just go get lost, you know. But yeah, I don't know what you think about that, Tom.
Yeah, no. Well, there is the Premier League. I can't remember if it was last year or it could have been a year ago, a couple of years ago. They put the wage cap on how much clubs can total players' wages to. I can't remember what the overall value. I think it comes out with that you can't have an overall wage below over 20 million, or something like that. You know, per week. But like I said, it depends on a couple of factors. One, how big your squad is, I think if you've got, you know, how can I say, an average squad, you should have about 26 players, 25, something like that. You have the 11 that play, and then you have, you know, your bench, and then you have your whole other, you know, youth players and whatever that want to come into the transition of the team. But a lot smaller squads go to around 22 players, which is an 11 on the field and 11 off of it, effectively. That's a small size squad. In the case of putting reduced wages based upon how many games and not playing enough games, agents wouldn't sign their players up for clubs if those were the agreements in place, because they're not going to get a full payment for their client. So you would have a legal problem based upon that you're not fulfilling a player's full needs. And look, I'm not here to defend agents and players and saying this, but from a player's perspective, they will look at it from the fact of, well, I'm not making any money. What's the point in playing football? I'm not making any money. That's what they would say, unfortunately. So you could go from, say, having a £40,000 wage package. Let's say a Brandon Williams, for example, 40,000 wage package, but because he doesn't play a lot of games, he might only get half, which is 20k. And he could say, well, I'm not actually getting any money for this. I'm losing half of my wage for not playing. So I want to go somewhere else, and I want to force a move elsewhere. And then you create problems in clubs where players want to leave because they're not going to get sufficiently enough wages for them. And then that creates an exodus within clubs where suddenly you could have a situation where if you want to renegotiate a contract with a player, how can you renegotiate a contract with a player that you've already aggravated? So it creates a lot. I understand Stephanie's point, and I agree with it, that it helps clubs to reduce wages and helps getting players out, but it also gives them more problems in terms of players and agents can demand payoffs like what Harry Maguire has done, for example, to then leave your club. That then would make a lot more sense that agents would demand their clients do that with the football clubs. But then what you're saving in wages, you're not really saving because you've got to pay the people off to get them to leave. So it works two ways. I think the Premier League should introduce a wage cap on how much a player should be paid per week. I don't think, and I've always said this, I don't think any player coming to any league, irrespective of it being our own league in the Premier League, I don't ever think that a player in the Premier League should ever be allowed to be paid over £500,000 per week. I think that should be the cap, and that's it.
Yeah, okay.
Like the Haaland wage package, as far as I understand it, he gets a base salary of £450,000 per week. He gets an increased payment package to £500,000 per week with appearances, and then in terms of actual scores and the actual contribution towards the team, he gets a bonus on, and then he also gets a bonus on if they win trophies. And I think his overall wage package at the end of a season would average out at around £700,000 per week, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And you go into Saudi Arabia now, for example, they're offering mediocre average players nearly what Haaland would get in the Premier League right now per week. I mean, Jordan Henderson's made the top 15 players in the world's highest earning list. And that's no disrespect to Henderson, because I think he's a decent player, but he's not in the caliber of players that should be getting paid that sort of money. That's like your Vinny Juniors, your Mbappe's, your Haaland's, he's making more money than these people per week. How? Well, that's Saudi Arabia.
That's where football is, man. That's where football is, unfortunately. Send Maguire to play with the under-18, says David T. I want to see how Maguire plays. I think he'll do well there. Yeah, no, defensively, I think I said defensively protected teams. I think Maguire can be fine. It's just that it's not going to be at Manchester United. Tomorrow is going to be a good day for neutral fan. Tottenham vs United and City versus Newcastle. And then Stephanie says, Tom, United is successful with Mount, Onana, Højlund signings because no competition from rival clubs was the reason we were able to negotiate on transfer fees. Exactly. If we don't have any competition, I know PSG were kind of biting on the heels for Højlund, but I never felt they were that serious. But if we'd had competition, then yeah, I don't think that would be good. I just let's get to 20. Yeah, let's get to 20 likes, guys. Come on, there's been 30 plus people watching. Let's get to 20 likes, guys. Come on, 20 likes. It's all. That's all. For all this free content for a journalist of Tom's caliber nearby, which you're not going to get on some of even the bigger Manchester United fan channels, you know. So get to the 20 likes. It's not asking for much as well. Yes, as says, yeah, Hendo is on 700k per week. This is a rumor. Low, probably. Question for Tom: Are Maguire, Martial, and McTominay viewed as commercial assets for the Glazers family? Is Glazenomics still there? I remember Mourinho wanted to sell Martial, but Joel Glazer blocked it.
Well, funnily enough, Joel Glazer blocked Anthony Martial leaving the football club based upon they believed that he was going to be a future Ballon d'Or winner. That's the reason why they blocked the move. And that was only, I think, 2-3 seasons actually after they actually bought him under Louis van Gaal. So you're selling a potential superstar. Really, it's a similar dilemma to what you have now with maybe Jadon Sancho, where you bought him thinking he's going to be a superstar. He's not a superstar right now, but he's at an age where he could still be a superstar somewhere else. So you're kind of in a similar sort of model fold. In terms of Maguire, Martial, and McTominay, as commercial assets, I'll be completely honest, they don't add a lot of value. Out of all three of them, I'll be honest, Maguire probably adds the most value based upon he's an majorly established international player with one of the top 5-6 nations in the world, in England. So you could look at maybe a commercial asset from that perspective. But McTominay, like I say, he's a player that will run through brick walls for you, really. So from a financial aspect, they're not viewed as majorly commercial assets. For example, I guess in comparison, you could look at it at, say, a Casemiro is valued at a massively more commercialised asset than a Maguire, Martial and McTominay put together, based upon his profile, what he's won, what he's done, everything. Varane, you could put in the same argument and category as him. You know, so again, there's this situation where there's a lot of players at United that are valued highly commercially. Yes, of course. Cristiano Ronaldo, even when he was, performing his exodus and I want to leave, I've got all these offers from Europe and Saudi Arabia and all this, that, and the other, and he blew up on Piers Morgan's Talk TV. But even at that time, he was still a majorly commercialised asset. People were buying Cristiano Ronaldo shirts with Manchester United and Cristiano Ronaldo on the back because he will never play for the football club ever again. And they wanted to get that just before he left, and it was taken back as an actual customization. So, again, commercialized assets, they're not valued as highly as other players, but based upon the Glazer family actually getting money for said players, out of all three of those players, they value Scott McTominay the most based upon he's a young player, he come through the academy system, therefore anything that they get, they're not making a loss on, they're going to make it. Every single penny of it will be a profit based upon he's a young player come through the system. Hence, what Chelsea have been doing for God knows how many years, and City now are taking the same model really, where they've sold a lot of young players recently, and they've got sell-on clauses and pretty hefty ones really for say the Lavia move and James Trafford. I think they've got a 25% sell-on clause in, so they've got quite a few sell-on clauses in a lot of their players. At the end of the day, they conduct business like a football club. United don't. That's the difference.
Yep. I wish I could disagree with you, Tom, but it's true. It's true. And like I said, it adds to, for those who were tuned into my Greenwood stream, it adds into my growing apathy towards Manchester United Football Club. Before I see your final question, Stephanie, we're just going to quickly just do a brief conversation about the Spurs game. So, Spurs versus United tomorrow. I don't really know what to expect from this team because I am worried about this midfield. I suspect what I don't want, however, is for Eriksen to come into this midfield in place of Mount. I don't think that's the right idea because I still think we'll be swamped in midfield. I agree with RSV that I think that if you want to play, if it was me, and obviously I don't have usually would have a formation generator, I'd show the team but I would play, for me, I would obviously play, the back five is still the same, Luke Shaw, Martinez, Varane, Wan-Bissaka, Onana. Then midfield is Casemiro. You play Bruno as the deep line playmaker. And then probably you play Mount either in the 8, or you could play Eriksen in that position and then put Mount off the left, and then put Rashford up top, and then put Sancho and Anthony. That's somewhere where we could stop, because if we do that, and you put Mount off the left this time, and you put Rashford up top, and then I would say I would actually start Sancho off the right. I actually think that could work because you have the option to bring on Anthony and actually Garnacho later on for impact. You can potentially bring on McTominay to do something as well. So that's what I would start. If you want to get Bruno and Mount and play on stuff, which you're going to have to, then put Mount off the left. You can bring in Eriksen in the number 8 position, and then you can play Sancho off the right and Rashford through the middle. Although Martial is fit, so and Martial was on the bench in the last game, so I don't really. And according to Manchester City News, Martial is part of the squad going down, so I don't really understand what we're doing with Martial. He didn't come on at all in the first game. So I anticipate that he will be on the bench and maybe come on as a. But if he doesn't, if Martial doesn't come on at all during the second game, I generally don't know why we're bringing him. What's the point of him in the spots? Because he is the only striker in quote in this team, and if he's not fit to play, why is he on the bench? As much as I dislike Maguire, at least Maguire is fit to play. There's no point in bringing someone into the squad and putting them on the bench if they're not fit to play a football game. So Martial, Garnacho, and Anthony being the bench are potential options on the front. But I would start with that lineup because I think that's probably give us a bit more balance. But if he goes with the only thing I guess you could make an argument for Spurs is I suspect Spurs will play a much higher line than Wolves did. When Wolves did press us, but when obviously we had possession, they did defend quite deep. I don't think Spurs will defend as deep as Wolves did. I think, but they will obviously have taken note on pressing us, and they have the players to press us and cause us problems, and certainly go from midfield, especially likes of Basuma, for example, and likes of Son, who can actually finish, unlike the Wolves players. Before I hand over to Tom and just see if there's any questions about that. Okay. Yeah. So just Tom, just briefly, how do you feel that we should start?
Well, in terms of lineup, or
just in terms of the lineup, how we should set up.
For me, I think really defense probably picks itself. I think Onana, Shaw, Martinez, Varane, and Wan-Bissaka, I think, should probably be the defensive setup. Casemiro for me again in midfield. I would personally sacrifice, and I would play Bruno deeper, and I would give Mount the number 10 role going forward, and play Casemiro and Fernandes next to each other. And look, if it's not working, you can always ship one of Mount or Fernandes to the wing, and then compensate by bringing, Scott McTominay in if you're getting run over in midfield or whoever. So you can compensate for some of the players, really. For me, that's what I would go for. And for front three, it's difficult because I know what Ten Hag. I already know what Ten Hag is going to do. He's going to play Rashford down the middle, but I would play him off the left. For me, what I would personally do is I would play Rashford off the left. I would take the risk if Martial's not fit to play or whatever. I would rather play Jadon Sancho as the false 9, where he showed glimpses and glamours of what he could do against Arsenal, who are a lot better of a team than Spurs, even though it was in pre-season. And he was playing against big bully centre-backs, Saliba, Gabriel, in the same way he's going to do with Dyer and Romero tomorrow. So I think, for me, I would just stick him in there and see what he can do. I don't think he can do a worse job than what Rashford can do up front, for me. Rashford, I've always said this, he's not a number 9. I've said it before again about Anthony Martial. He's not a number 9 because he's not consistent enough. And your best form of consistency is being available. He's not even available. So at the end of the day, you can't rely on somebody that's not going to be there for you every single game, or can't be there for you every single game. And so for me, I would go for Rashford, Jadon Sancho into the false 9 role. And I would personally play Anthony again. I'd give him another go. But again, if it doesn't work out, look, you've got the options now. This is what I like about this season. We do have options off the bench. Whereas last season, I think we looked at the bench and we thought, we haven't got a lot. We didn't really, if we're being fair and honest. Like, you do have such as Donny van de Beek on the bench, which could come on and there could be a surprise. But look, it's difficult, and I think there is some question marks over some of the players. I mean, Martinez obviously got hacked off in the Wolves game because of a minor injury from what we was hearing. Again, there was murmurs anyway around that some players hadn't quite hit a good level of fitness since coming back from the US and stuff. But I mean, we're going to have to wait and see. I don't understand how you can go away on a pre-season tour and then come back not fit. It's ridiculous. Yeah. It's either ridiculous, incompetent, or unprofessional. And I don't know. It might be all three of them, to be honest.
Well, one of the things I least respect to Ronaldo is that he always did at least try and keep up his fitness. That's certainly one thing I respect that guy. But it's by the by. So score predictions, and obviously get in the chat. What are your score predictions for the Spurs versus United game? Despite me being somewhat pessimistic, the only time I remember us losing to Spurs was when we were down to 10 men at Old Trafford when Lamela got Martial sent off and we collapsed. So as far as I'm concerned, I don't think we'll lose this game. I think Spurs are still trying to figure out what they're doing, I guess, with their coach. I mean, Ange, I think it is a good coach, but and they did score goals against Brentford. Ooh, Tom's disappeared. They did score goals against Brentford. However, I think we can win. Guys. I'll just quickly get this off because I'll just wait for Tom, or maybe just his computer crashed or something. Give me 2 seconds. I'll do it. Let's do this. There we go. Yeah. So I don't know. I think that we should win, but that's based on Ten Hag learning from what I saw against Wolves. If you're gonna a situation where you're gonna play Mount and Bruno so high up, and you're gonna try and outpress Spurs, you're making a risk because Spurs have a midfield that can cause problems, and they have finishers who can finish us off. So I hope he learns, but the thing is, Ten Hag is quite stubborn. So there you go. Let's have a quick look at final comments before we go. Final question for me. Added on time situation is bonkers. Seems very long. Why can't we have stopcock zones at all? PL saying like they do in rugby, and there's no debate on how much is added. Yeah, I see that. I guess the thing is that like, I don't know. I mean, it makes sense. Just stop the clock. I guess the only thing is, maybe would people complain about a lack of transparency, like, or would that mean that there'd be a lot of stoppages? I'm not sure, but yeah, I don't really see a reason why they can't just for everything. The only thing I guess maybe is that you'd be stopping the clock a lot. That's the thing I can think of because you'd be stopping all the time. You'd be stopping after every throw-in, after every dead ball situation, like corners, free kicks. You'd be stopping after substitutions. You'd be stopping lots. So I just wonder whether whether that would be feasible given the amount of stoppages there are over a 90-minute game. I don't know. So, but it certainly makes things interesting. I think. But at the same time, so I think what it does do and what I do like about it is because I would argue that there's still an advantage. If you're, for example, if you roll around injured, for example, and you stop the clock, you can, regain your what's it called again? Regain your stamina. You know, you can sort of negotiate with team tactics, talks, all the rest of it. So there is an advantage of getting the clock stopped. However, if you're adding on time, even though it's technically the same time, I still think there's a psychological kind of thing where, okay, yeah, we've been injured or we've been on the floor, whatever, but we're still gonna have to play this length of time. And so essentially what I'm saying is it's gonna minimize or stop people from time wasting, essentially. But we'll see what happens. I don't buy the FFP excuse. It's the Glazers holding us back as usual. If Chelsea can do creative accounting, why can't the Glazers do the same? They basically invented creative accounting. That's a fair point, yeah. That's a fair point. I guess maybe the question is how many players are willing to give a 7 or 8 year contract to accept that Manchester United. But yeah, I don't know why they can't. Yep, I agree with you. I agree. Although it might bite Chelsea back in the butt, so we'll see. We will win, says David T, but we can't have Shaw trying to invert as a secondary DM alongside Casemiro. We tried to the last game, and Shaw wasn't consistently inverting. Yeah, that was whack. That was whack. Presumably to cover for Bruno and Mount going up top. They can't do that, otherwise we're going to get punished. I would love to see if Ten Hag tried Martinez in the John Stones role, but it would mean we would have to go for the 3-2 build-up. That's true. Can't see we have the players to play the 3-1-6 formation at the moment. No, not at all. Score predictions 3-0. Really? People that I would say I'm predicting 2-1. 2-1. 3-0 is quite extensive. 70 likes. Come on, get the 20 likes. 3-0 says Stephanie. Are you streaming the UCL? Yes, I am. I will be streaming the UCL draw on the 31st. I'll be live for the UCL draw. So yes, I will definitely be streaming that. So stay tuned for that. Smash notification buttons when go live. I will be streaming that indeed. Probably getting a few people on as well. I would love us to scrap the box midfield because Luke Shaw is not good at inverting, which was the sole root of us capitulating versus Wolves. Shaw should only play on the wide area flanks of Bruno. Shaw should only play on the wide area flanks with Bruno as deep line playmaker. I agree, or potentially left-sided centre back. That's it as far as I'm concerned. Inverting to being a DM is I don't know why why are we trying these things when the season has started? Why is Shaw inverting as a DM? It's nonsense. A lot of people didn't realize that Shaw wasn't inverting properly in that game. He was the real culprit why we're actually horrible versus Wolves. I think it was multifactorial, but it does make sense because I was looking at on the left and I was like, why is it? I didn't quite understand what Shaw was doing. Possibly maybe he wasn't getting some support from Rashford on that side, so maybe that didn't help. But yeah, it did seem a bit weird because Wan-Bissaka seemed to be staying out wide and actually almost being a fullback, but Luke Shaw wasn't. So yeah, I agree. I'm predicting a 1-1 draw, says AD. Fair enough. Do you do live? Yes. In fact, I'll be doing one. I was supposed to do it because Monday is a bit tricky for me. But this is going to be a weekend one. So guys, I'm going to just post it in the chat. But if you're not aware, this is my Twitch. Just post it there. So just in the chat. So I'll be doing a watch along for the Spurs game on Twitch. So the watch alongs are going to be on Twitch. So head over to Twitch. If you're not new already, just follow me on Twitch. All watch alongs on this channel are going to be live on Twitch. And probably when I get my new laptop, I'll probably be uploading some clips to the YouTube channel, goal separations, etc. But the main live watch alongs will be live on Twitch. And then depending on demand and things and stuff like that, we might come up to YouTube. But for now, I'm probably going to do my watch alongs on Twitch for the time being as I build that up. And then we'll do the match reactions on this channel. So that is the plan. Phil Walker retired. He did AD. He did. After all, we can also become the best Madrid team with Bruno's D-line playing on the left side and Shaw not inverting. That's how Madrid played as it gives us more ground on midfield and helps Casemiro out. And Stephanie Griff lastly says, great show, everybody. Fingers crossed for 3 points, 3 goals, and clean sheet United tomorrow. Exactly. And with that, thank you guys so much for watching. I think Tom probably is having a computer issue, won't be back, but big up Tom. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at TomJournalist1. Thank you guys to both who tuned in to the Sale Update show as well as this weekly show. It's we're obviously building a community here. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe if you're new. Stay tuned. We'll obviously be doing the match reaction for the Spurs game tomorrow. The watch along will be on Twitch, and then our members only stream will be Sunday evening for all you new members for that member goodness as well. Have a nice day, everyone, and cheers. Peace.